Hey, welcome back to another Poor Rover mix breakdown. This time it's after hours because it is late. And when it's late, we get into the mixes even better. And I would encourage you to grab a drink of something that is age appropriate, however old you are, whether that be water or something else, because this is, as you can see, water. And we will dive into our latest single, which is called Keep Fighting. So let's get into it.
I know things have been bad this time of year, with no signs of stopping, we keep fighting.
Okay, as we get into the DAW here, which is going to be Fender Studio Pro, we will be discussing kind of the core base of the track, which is going to be acoustic guitar, mandolin, and bass. Then we'll spread out to the other production elements. From there, we'll talk about instrument bus. Then we'll go to the vocals, and then we'll talk about the master bus processing. The mandolin, acoustic guitar, and bass were all recorded in this room at the exact same time. So we recorded all of this together, and we kind of mix it from there. The reason we do that is not because it is necessarily a cleaner way to do it. It's more entertaining to us, and we also walk out of it with a song that's like 60% of the way there. As opposed to recording like an individual track, you kind of have to remember what the song sounds like. But if you're recording all together, you can kind of play off each other, and you can get big when it's trying to get big, and you don't have to remember to add like a second guitar track or whatever. Phineas of the Billie Eilish fame, when he's working with his band, I think it's called the Onlys or something like that. When they were doing their recording, he mentioned that he was used to having like a riser to go into the chorus. But when you're playing with a live band that you're tracking, you can just have them play a little harder, and that gives the weight to go into the next section. And that's why we do that. It makes the production a little simpler. It makes the recording process a hell of a lot harder. But ultimately, we like the fact that we're just three guys playing in a room together and recording that. That's cool to us. Let's start with the acoustic guitar. So as you can see here, we've got two mics. Mic number one is a large diaphragm condenser mic placed at the 12th fret, pointed at where the neck of the guitar and the body of the guitar meet. And that mic is a Mojave Audio MA-201-FET. And the other mic number two, is a small diaphragm condenser mic placed behind the bridge, pointed right at the wood of the guitar. These are phase aligned, so they shouldn't have any weirdness. And the small diaphragm condenser mic is an Earthworks SR25. As a personal note, I only have like two really what I would call good condenser mics, and I'm using both of them right here. The SR25 is really bright. Oh my gosh, it's so bright. If I were to use that on something like a mandolin, it's like, oh, it takes your head clean off. It's so bright. For acoustic guitar, if I put it too close to the strings, it's just like, ugh. If you listen to our recording Cup of Tea, the mix breakdown for that, you can hear the raw track, which was just recorded with an SR25, and it is so bright. By contrast, the M201-FET is a lot more balanced. So it's a U87 style mic. You're getting kind of the full spectrum, as opposed to a little bit more of a pointed look at like the high mids. Let's listen to the large diaphragm condenser mic by itself. It sounds very balanced. Due to the mic positioning, it's a little thinner than maybe, say, you would hear acoustically in the room. But that being said, like, that's a very usable sound. I thought it needed something extra, which is why I have the second mic, which let's listen to that by itself. And you can hear that's already like a weirder kind of tonal range there. You get some of the low end that the mic one was missing out on. You get a lot of that sizzly high end too. And for whatever reason, if you put them both together, it sounds pretty close to a real guitar. If this was a track with just acoustic guitar, I think that sounds a little too thin, but we've got other elements to add the low end. This seems to fit in that nice mid range between the mandolin and the bass. It's kind of fitting in a sandwich. It's the ice cream in an ice cream sandwich. It's that middle piece. And I think it's doing a good job right there. I don't hate that sound at all. I think it sounds really nice. Let's get into the bus processing for the acoustic guitars. I like to use buses whenever I can. It makes my life a lot simpler. As opposed to having to decide, oh, what's the right EQ for each one of these channels, I can just say they're both acoustic guitar. I'm going to treat them probably roughly the same. Let's just do it one time. So the first move I'm making here on this processing is going to be a EQ. I'm cutting out the low end, dipping some of the low mids to make it sound a little less muddy. Let's listen to that. And you can hear that just made it a little more focused. It's not quite the full spectrum of things. We're kind of paring down the low end a little bit. Anything below 80 we don't want. And we're also just kind of dipping around 260 to make it less muddy. From there, we're adding some cassette tape emulation. And this is to add some character to the track. So we're adding saturation and some drive. We're also doing some filtering. So we're taking out high end. Anything above 12.6 is getting kind of decimated. We're also cutting more of things below 80. Let's listen to it on and off so you can hear what the cassette tape emulation is doing. And you can hear it's a pretty big difference on the high end when it's in solo. When it's in the full mix, it's a little less noticeable. It's taking it from being a bright sound to a significantly less bright sound. From there, I'm also cutting a little more around 500. This is just to help the vocal stick out more, if I'm not mistaken. Very subtle, doing just a little bit to kind of help the vocal sit in the mix a little better. We also have this compressor at the very, very end, and this compressor is doing something, but it's a very subtle thing. So you can see I've got the threshold turned all the way down, so basically everything that goes through this compressor is going to be affected, but you can see the ratio is only 1.1, so 1.1 to 1. That is so slight. So I'll play it, you can hear what it's doing. Taking out 2.4 dB, so it's pretty subtle. I'm not doing any makeup. This is really just to gently curve the dynamics to make it fit in a instrumental track a little bit better. After the mix bus, I'm also doing some sends to an instrumental room reverb. So this room verb is a simple Fender Studio Pro native plugin called Room Reverb, which is exactly as it sounds. It's a room reverb algorithm, barely any length, just to make it sound. It's just to make it sound like it's in a room. It's not really to add any effect or anything like that. It's just to make it feel like it's in a room. I also have Mix Tool here. I normally do all my gain automation on this Mix Tool plugin, which comes with Fender Studio Pro. But I broke my cardinal rule and started doing fader automation, which I hate because if you like the moves you're making on the fader, but you think it's just too quiet, or in this case, too loud, you're just kind of can't do a whole lot with it. Queued in my fader automation for this, and it just felt too loud, so I needed to take out 4 dB to make it sit a little better. So I'll turn on the sends as we go along. And you can hear that's just making it sound like it's in a room, like it's not doing a whole lot aside from making it sound like a room. I love the trick where if you have something panned hard to one side, in this case hard left, you send the track to the reverb on the right ear. So you've got this stereo feel that sounds like it's in a room. Okay, that's all for the acoustic guitar. Let's go to the mandolin next. Okay, mandolin. So Frank records mandolin for the band. He also comes up with all the parts for the mandolin, and he records line out from the mandolin to get that snap, that immediacy, that aggression, with it being very bright and plucky. And he also uses a Warm Audio WA-47 Junior to kind of capture the more acoustic properties of the mandolin. So let's listen to the line first. Now, I don't know how all mandolin players record. I know bluegrass players probably record predominantly with like one omnidirectional mic in a room, or they like to pretend they do. So I don't know if other mandolin players use a line out, but if it's any consolation to you aspiring mandolin players that can't afford a really, really nice mic, Amanda Shires, who is an incredible violin player, singer, songwriter in her own regard. I was watching a documentary where she was playing violin, and I was like, oh, I wonder what mic they're going to use on that, because I was like mic obsessed. Wanted to burn some money, you know. She was plugged directly in to a piezo pickup. Just because it's there and it sounds a little quacky sometimes doesn't mean you can't use it. I'm using that kind of as the attack, and then I'm using the mic here for a little bit more of the body of the kind of texture that comes with an actual mandolin in a room. So let's listen to just the mic right now. And you can hear a lot of guitar bleed from there. We didn't do a very good job of isolating those. From the acoustic guitar, it wasn't too bad, but from the mandolin, you could hear the acoustic guitar pretty well. Let's put those both together and hear what that sounds like. I mean, that to me sounds like a mandolin should sound. Don't hear anything in there that is unusable that I don't want. I will be cutting some things out with the EQ, but for the most part, that sounds exactly the way I want it to sound. And you can see we've got these two compressor plugins on each of these channels, and this is essentially the exact same compressor as was on the acoustic guitar bus, doing the exact same job, which is just helping it fit into the mix a little bit better. You don't even really hear it in solo. It's not doing a whole lot. It's doing a job. It's doing the thing where it's tucking it down just a little bit. I am doing some makeup gain, so we're not losing the volume. It's more like the perception of it. We also have a mandolin solo. I decided to treat these two set of tracks differently. They're recorded the exact same way, actually the exact same take too, but the clip gain is a little different. Let's listen to the mandolin solo raw. So nice. I love that solo. The only thing I'm doing on the solo channel, these solo tracks, is adding this plugin called Magma Stress Box, which is basically a expander compressor. Really dirty. It is doing a whole lot, and I'm only supposed to be doing 2-to-1 compression on this, and it is going to be looking like it's slammed utterly. But it's doing a pretty cool thing. Let's do it off, and then I'll turn it on as we're going. And you can hear that takes it from being just a set of notes that Frank is playing or really focusing on playing to sounding more like a solo. The reason I added this is not because I love the plugin. I think the plugin's not really useful most of the time, but this is the one time I was like, no, this is actually doing something that I like. It makes it sound like a solo. Throw in the mic with it. Listen to this. It takes it just to sound like more like a solo. I kind of like grew up listening to like soft rock and grunge, all these other types of rock music with solos. And so I want the solo to sound like a solo. So, crank the volume up more, have some sustain on there.
Just listen for a minute. The sustain, listen to it.
You can hear the characteristic of the audio change when it goes through this. On the mix bus, I'm doing some pretty large EQ moves, cutting out a ton of low end, ton of low mids. I am kicking up 2K a little bit. I wanted it to sound a little more telephony or like nasally to kind of stand out in a solo. The great solo sound you're used to hearing in electric guitar is like 2K bump. So I just did a 2K bump of like, what is that, 3 dB? That's all I really did. I'm also cutting some of the high end. In the context of the whole instrumental mix, the really, really bright mandolin can kind of get jarring if you don't have a banjo to kind of balance it out on the other side, if you're thinking of like bluegrass music. Wanted to cut some of the high end a little bit. Let's listen to it off, and then I'll turn it on, and we'll get both tracks this time. And compressor, same as it ever was. Just helping it fit in the mix a little bit better. This one's a little more noticeable on the solo, I think. Let's listen to that. Yeah, you can hear it's just tucking it down just a tiny bit more. Although you can argue I've spent 3 plugins trying to make it stand out more. Help tie the other mandolin parts in together. I'm also doing sends. The non-solo mandolin tracks are going to that instrumental room reverb we talked about with the acoustic guitar, and that's what this sounds like. It's the exact same thing, but opposite. Mandolin's panned hard right. The reverb is going to be on the left ear. For the solo, however, I'm doing something different. I'm using this slapback effects channel, and I'm using AirWindows Tape Delay 2. Thank you, Chris from AirWindows. You are doing the Lord's work. Please keep going. Thank you so much. The time doesn't seem to be correlated to like milliseconds. Like that's not 740 milliseconds. It might be 74 milliseconds. I picked one that I thought sounded like a slap. A little bit of regen, which is repeats, and some of the characteristic stuff. And it's fully wet. And if I were to just kind of turn it on. You also can see here I'm sending the line to the far right, mic to the far left, and that's just to give me some stereo spread. They're the same notes played at the same time, but the tonal characteristics and the timbre is different in both. So that kind of makes it a little bit wider, which I thought sounded nice. Also on this, because I know that delay is considered like a effect that you would call it wet, but this 1 or 2 repeat delay didn't sound very wet to me. It sounded very dry. So I wanted a little bit of a reverb to kind of get in the way and take it back a little bit. And this is the Safari Pedals Flamingo Verb, which is basically a drive circuit mixed with a spring reverb. And we're going to do some pre-delay, 75 milliseconds worth, high pass, so cutting the lows around 160, rolling the highs off to about 8K. The time of the reverb is 1.2 seconds, and it's like super wide, and I'm getting some drive on there. So let's listen to it off and then on. And you can hear it there on the repeat repeats. You know, listen to that again. It's very subtle. It's in the background. It just added a little bit of space, made it seem like it stayed long enough to not get in the way of the solo, but to have it add some gravitas to it, some weight behind it. And you can see I blended it down to 12%. If I were to turn it like up to like 50, it'd sound probably too much. It just kind of helps it fit in the mix and sound epic. Let's listen to both the acoustic guitar and the mandolin together going into the solo. Nice. Next, we'll talk about the bass. So the bass is played by Ryan. He's the bass player in the band, and he plays a jazz bass. So it's very bright, very articulate. You can hear a lot of what's going on, and sometimes you want that, and sometimes you don't. In this song, I felt like it was very high-end information around the vocal that gets in the way. So we're going to get into that in a second. Let's take a listen to the bass. As you can hear, that's a great bass sound. He's using a SansAmp preamp. That's a killer bass sound, you know? Especially for the type of music that we play. Ryan loves to play more than just root notes, which I love hearing more than just root notes. He's got a lot of rhythm in the band. He doesn't need to play just the downbeats. He can play other things. And so he kind of treats this like a cello. Treats the parts like we're trying to do some counterpoint, trying to show some counter melody in this. And you can hear that especially in this part. For the processing of this, I am doing some EQ moves. I'm raising the 80K to give the bass, or I guess it's set to 60K, but you know what I mean. I'm raising the bass frequencies so that it can kind of stand out a little bit more. And I'm cutting a ton of high end. I thought the bass sounded a little clicky, not in a bad way, but it got in the way of the vocal. And ultimately, since we're making music with lyrics, the vocal is king. So let's listen to that off and then on. A lot easier to mix that. I'm also doing some of that same compression, same as it ever was.
Same as it ever was.
I'm throwing on some sidechain compression from the kick drum. We'll get there. And last but not least, I'm also adding some very, very short, very small reverb to make it sound a little less sterile, like a little less direct, making it sound like it's in a room. You can probably sense a trend that I want them to sound like we're in a room, because that's what ultimately we recorded in. So let's listen to that. And you can hear there, it's not like doing a ton. It's more something you feel as opposed to hear, if that makes sense. Like you can hear that not much has changed, but you can feel that it's in a room now. Let's listen to all of those groups together at the same time. Hell yeah, that's awesome. I'm getting into it, guys. Hope you're enjoying it. If you watched my last mix breakdown video for Cup of Tea, the instrumental basically stopped like right there. You know, we had acoustic guitar, mandolin, bass, violin, and that's it. This one, I wanted to go the opposite direction. So there's a a lot more double, probably, the tracks. So let's get into my favorite part of the song, the electric guitars. So my electric guitars were recorded with a Schecter Tele plugged directly into the interface on bridge pickup for everything, I believe. I'm not often a bridge pickup guy, if I'm being honest. I'm more of a neck pickup guy with a Tele. I just think the neck sounds so good. But who am I to get in the way of a great sounding bridge pickup? I had an idea for the pre-chorus. I wanted to match the melody that was kind of going on, the ba-da-da. So let's listen to that. I am adding an IR here. This is the IR that comes with Fender Studio Pro. So, you know, you get some Fender amps kind of built in, which is really, really nice. I'm throwing a compressor on there. This is like my take on a traditional like country twang sound. Like it's very snappy, very compressed, very Fender 20. And it kind of is my homage to Brad Paisley. Although if he ever sees this, probably can send me a cease and desist because it sounds nothing like Brad Paisley. It sounds a lot closer to a real amp after adding this IR. The real secret sauce on this electric guitar groups is going to be on the bus. So I'm going to break my rule of talking individual tracks and buses and talk about this plugin next, which is the Temperance Light plugin from Eventide. They gave this away for free, probably the end of the year last year. And basically, this is like a harmonic reverb. Obviously, Eventide is famous for like having the shimmer effect, which got overdone in the 2010s and also worship music, but that's aside the fact. Another day, another topic. But this is essentially just a reverb where you can filter out all the notes that you don't want. So for this one, I have like a D major 11 chord that I say I only want to hear these notes. And normally I'm a big hexatonal fan, so like 6-note scales, and I try to stay away from the 4 and I add the 6, but I just thought this sounded cool. I am going to play it without it, and then I'll turn it on so you can hear what kind of caught my ear. Man, that sounds so cool still. Breaking the fourth wall a little bit, this is like the 4th time I've recorded this video because of technical issues. Every single time, I love when this plugin kicks in. It sounds so cool. I think they're still giving it away for free. If you have the chance, get it. It's kind of killer. Steal my sauce. I don't care. I love hearing this. I'd hear it on something else. On this electric guitar sound, I think it has a nice mix of like xylophone and an organ. So like you get the really, or like a steel drum, I guess, kind of. So you hear like the immediacy of the note and it's in pitch, but there's also other resonances with it. And for me, it sounds like an organ, like it's very reedy, but I can hear like steel drum as well. So let's listen to it again and see if you can hear it. If I were to take off the Temperance, it would sound less cool, I guess. Just a normal reverb, which is, it's pretty good reverb, all things considered, but that's not the sauce. On the next track, which is the EGL track, which stands for electric guitar left, I'm doing the exact same thing. I've got the exact same, I think I copied it. It's the exact same plugin, the exact same order, same preset, everything. And then I'm also adding a mix tool just for gain automation, nothing else. So I will kick on the amp after hearing the dry. I am a huge fan of Coldplay era of like Parachutes, very, very early stuff where we have this really clean, right, precise, compressed electric guitar sound doing a lot of like really nice strummy sounds. And I tried that and it just didn't really do a whole lot for me. I mean, it's just kind of uninspiring, but put on Temperance. It kind of sounds like somebody's playing an organ really lightly underneath, and we've got people that are like playing steel drums or xylophones. It's a cool sound, man. I don't know what to tell you. It's a cool sound. It's doing a lot of heavy lifting in the ambiance of this track. Is just Temperance. So the last track for the electric guitar group is this E.G. Right, and that's predominantly for the ending here. If you look over here, and if you're paying attention, you're like, well, that says E.G. left, but I'm hearing it on the right. And that's because I got really lazy. I didn't want to add an extra track. Apparently, I'm self-conscious about that kind of stuff. I already had 45 tracks on this, and I was like, that's too much. One less, I'll just do some automation. So I automated the EGL track on the instrumental solo part to go to be panned hard right instead of hard left. And the answer of why is because the mandolin is moving from right to center. I needed to replace that upper register kind of space filling, so that's why I did that. But then I did that and it sounded kind of empty, so then I threw on this send, which is called EG Verb. And it's really acting as kind of a slap reverb, if that makes sense. Listen to it. I'll turn it off and then turn it on. You can hear it's just in the right ear. And that is literally the stock reverb plugin from Fender Studio Pro. Smallish size of room, 50 millisecond pre-delay, 100% width. And it makes it sound wide. You still kind of get that ambiance in it. It doesn't feel like we're losing anything when we switch to the solo, which is what the point of it was. For the last track of this group, we have EGR, which is already talked about a little bit. This one, I wanted to do something different. So if you can listen to just this dry, you'll hear what I'm going for, I think. Into the song, big epic chords, you know, like with the rhythm, not just playing down beats. Since I had 2 amp sims, I wanted to do something different to kind of add some textural differences. So I went for my UAD Neve 1073 and I kind of cranked it up a little bit. You can hear it's fuzzy. I mean, not like in a true like fuzz pedal way, but it's got some hair on it. It's got some saturation on the high end. I'm boosting the high end a little bit to probably get it there and cutting some of the low end, but it's just a sonic difference to this. So if you hear them both together, it sounds like balanced but different, if that makes sense. And with Temperance, that sounds like this. That's some cool shit, man. That's some cool shit. Moving on for the electric guitar bus, I've also got some chow tape, kind of doing some cassette tape emulation, and this is just like slamming it full of drive, giving it some saturation, and then I am just cutting the hell out of the EQ, man. I'm taking out all the low end till we get to the low mids. I'm taking out all the high end till we get to the high mids, man. If it's above 5K, I don't want it. If it's below 225, I don't want it. Let's listen to it on and off, and you'll hear the kind of stark difference it makes. It sounds so cool. I love getting that tape cassette kind of, makes it sound lo-fi. I mean, the preset's called lo-fi. I did adjust it, but there I'm adding some T-saturator, and that's just basically a free mid-side saturation plugin. I wanted to only affect the sides. I wanted to bring the volume down just a smidge to make more room for the vocal, but I wanted the sides to have that a little bit more saturation to be kind of to stand out a little bit more. Kind of got lost in it there. I don't have time to talk about this plugin a whole lot, but I use it if I ever need to saturate a sound, but I wanted to leave the mid either less prominent or unaffected. From there, I'm also just doing some gain automation via Mix Tool. And that's the electric guitar. Let's listen to everything we have talked about so far all together in that part. That takes it from not amateurish, but unproduced song to a fully produced song. So I'll just kind of throw on the electric guitars as we go on. You can hear that just takes it up a notch. It just makes it feel more produced, and I love that. Okay, next in line, we have the piano, and the piano is Upright Piano by Audiolatry. Audiolatry. It's Upright Piano by Audiolatry. I think that's how you pronounce it. If I'm wrong, let me know in the comments below. I played around with a lot of piano sounds for this, and they all sounded too clean and too perfect. I wanted something that kind of harkens back to my favorite piano of all time, which is a Yamaha upright piano. Like, every time I get the chance to play one, I love it. It's just so incredible. This is not quite as good as that because it's not a real instrument, but it's a really good VST. Like, listen to this. Sounds like a piano, and sounds like an upright piano at that. I have a MIDI controller that's just a piano that has MIDI because, you know, that's the way life is. And I just recorded all of the MIDI down. I did adjust it slightly, and you can hear it'll sound a little robotronic at parts, but then I kind of bounced it to save processing power, and also because I don't trust, you know, live MIDI, to be honest with you. Like, it just kind of, I've played around with Ableton enough to know that sometimes MIDI just behaves in a world of its own. It has its own rules. So let's listen to just the piano by itself. From there, I'm doing some compression. This is the same as it ever was compression.
Same as it ever was.
I think I should start naming that preset as a preset. Actually, you know what? Let's do it. You were here first. You saw it. Not doing a whole lot. 3 dB based on the makeup gain. not a ton. Also adding some EQ. These may seem like they're pretty subtle compared to some of the other EQ moves I've made in other tracks. This is a VST. It's already been processed. It doesn't need to do a lot. I took out some of the low mids to kind of keep the muddiness down to the whole track. I raised the 1 to 2K area to make it stand out a little bit more, and the 5K just to make it sound brighter and more like what I want an upright piano to sound like. From there, I'm also doing that send to reverb again, kind of the exact same thing. Piano's panned hard right, reverb's going to be in the left ear. So let's listen to that. Just makes it sound like it's in a room. Let's listen to everything we've talked about all together so you get an understanding of how it is. Yeah, it's not super noticeable in the mix, but it's definitely doing its job of adding a little bit more oomph to the chord changes. And you hear a little bit of the melody on the off beats as well. All right, let's get into the drums. Anybody who's ever talked to me in person deeply knows that I've got a very complicated relationship with drums. I am not an amazing drummer. I can keep a beat pretty well, but fills are just stuff I don't know. So when it comes to like programming out drum patterns, I'm just not very good at it. I don't use a lot of drums in my music unless it just really needs it. I kind of try to find ways to get around having a drum kit, using percussion more of a textural element as opposed to a rhythmic element. Kind of like a great example in my mind is Jason Isbell's Cover Me Up. There's a really low tom in that, if you listen to it, floor tom. It's kind of acting as a bass drum, but it's so quiet in the mix. You kind of have to have really good headphones or a good sound speaker system to really hear it in any real meaningful way. But it's there if you listen, I promise. I wasn't after like a traditional rock sound. I wanted something that kind of was a textural element more than anything else, with the exception of maybe the kick. I wanted the kick to sound like a kick drum, but the rest I wanted to be as much of a timbral textural sound as opposed to a rhythmic sound. Somerville Sounds, he's a YouTuber. I don't remember his name. Evolve Somerville, I think. So maybe that's his last name. I should look that up. Hang on. Yeah, the YouTube channel is just called Somerville Sounds. He is a great YouTuber. He goes over really cool stuff. I loved his video on rubber bridge guitars, which is something that has been near and dear to my heart for several years. He just made this and he gave it away for free. It's kind of like a demo, and it did the job for me. It sounds the way I wanted it to sound, which is just like hot rods played very softly on a drum kit. Got that kind of textural element. And I should say I also bounce this down from MIDI as well because I don't trust MIDI. Call me a boomer. I don't care. I don't trust MIDI. Let's listen to just the kick. That's coming directly out of the VST. And you can hear it sounds like a live recorded kick, kind of a kick out sound, or you get kind of the high end, the clickiness of the kick. But I also wanted some thud. So I went searching and I found in my sample library a kick sample from reverb.com, which is kind of supposed to be like a James Brown kit style thing. So it's just all lows. So let's listen to that by itself. You can even hear that tape hiss in there. But it's just thuddy. It's not doing a whole lot else. So if you throw them both together, That sounds a little bit more how I want a kick drum to sound personally. For the sample from Reverb, since it's got that tape hiss that I didn't love, I'm rolling it all out. You can hear it really cleaned it up almost immediately. I'm also doing some sidechain compression on the bass like I mentioned, and here's the send for that. So that's the kick. Let's talk about the snare. The snare also comes from Somerville Sounds, doing the exact same thing. Let's listen to it as it is. I'm not interested in kick, snare, like 1, 2, 3, 4. I wanted something different to kind of highlight the rhythm, so to speak. So this is what I kind of came up with, and I think it works great. It is a little quiet in the mix maybe, but I'm okay with that because it's doing its job. It's making us feel the drums as opposed to hearing the drums, whatever that means. For the snare drum, I'm throwing some distortion on it in a small amount of like 4%. So let's listen to that. You know, for only 4%, that's actually adding a pretty meaningful difference. It's kind of getting that white noise sound. So I'm a huge fan of drum machines. I don't know why I'm kind of anti-drum kit, but pro drum machine. I don't know, but I am. This snare, when you throw this distortion on it, this transistor distortion with like 4% mix, it kind of makes it sound like it's a white noise kind of in the background, which is what a lot of snare sounds are in these old drum machine units, where it's just like a percussive hit and a white noise. You can see the moves I'm making here, nothing crazy. I'm hitting that transistor super hard, full tilt, everything you got, slamming into the transistor to get that distortion, not doing any EQ moves, doing a little bit of extra drive, but the mix is the main thing here. So if I were to turn that mix up more, in a different song, that mix all the way up is like a cool sound, but in this song, it's not that way. I'm also doing some EQ moves, taking out mainly just high end, because I'm not changing the high end at all on this distortion, so it kind of could get a little overwhelming in the context of the mix. Yeah, it just takes a little bit of that brightness down without it going away completely. I don't think we need much above 10K for a snare anyway, at least for this snare we don't. And then we've got some compression on it. And then this one, I'm not using, same as it ever was, compression. I'm using a actual compression. So let's take a listen to that. 2-to-1 level of compression, 2.2-to-1. You know, threshold is where it is. The knee is not changed. The makeup gain is huge though, so I'm only reducing it by about a little under 6 dB, but I am then doubling it to kind of get it to sound the way I wanted the snare to sound, which is kind of like tight, but like loud and aggressive. Although the fact that it's still kind of supposed to be emulating, like played with like hot rods. For the snare drum, I'm also sending to a snare verb, which is just an IR verb, and I picked one that sounded good. It's a preset called Bossa Nova Perk Room. Listen to that. You can hear it's adding a little bit of depth to it. It's doing a thing. There's also a ride. Here it is. Cool. Crash. Even cooler. On the drum bus, we've got this splitter here. And what that really does is allows me to do parallel processing really, really easily. As opposed to having to find the right plugin with a mix knob on it, you can do it this way. So there's a splitter, and then I'm throwing one side to this J37 stereo tape emulation, which is supposed to be like Abbey Road tape. And on this is just giving it some saucy deliciousness. Let's listen to that. You can hear that make a huge difference in the final kind of track, acting kind of like a compressor where it's taking the highs down a little bit and boosting the lows up a little bit. So our dynamic range is a little bit more in the middle. And I could be hearing that wrong because it's mixed breakdown after hours, baby. It's different. Saturation's pretty high on that, but I do love this plugin. I've used it a ton in different places. Between this and like the UAD Studer, I use either one of those on like basically every track in some way. From there, we're doing some mix verb to kind of make it sound like it's in a room again. And you may be wondering why just send the whole bus to a reverb in the inserts. Why not send it to an effects? And I didn't want to make a new effects channel. I'm lazy. It was only going to be used for the drum set anyway, and I can control the mix pretty well. The reverb didn't have to sound like a particularly styled way. It just kind of had to be there. So that's why I went with mix verb. I like mix verb for stuff like that where it's like, I don't need it to sound particularly nice or good or amazing. I don't need to make people weak in the knees with it. It's just got to be there to add some space. This is perfect for that. And then at the very, very end, I'm kind of trimming the edges of the EQ. Let's listen to that. It's not doing a ton. It is helping a lot in the mastering of the track though. So let's crank it all on, baby. Let's do everything. Dude, I'm getting into it. We're getting there, baby. Next, we've got a tambourine sample that I got from Splice. Panned hard left. A little bit of mix verb to make it sound like it's in a room. Then I'm sending to a much more present room you can hear on the reverb. And again, it's panned hard left, so the reverb sends is going to be on the right. We also have some claps that I also got from Reverb. I don't know what pack this was from, but these are what they sound like. You can hear the reverb already on there. I threw more on there. I'm sending more to reverb. And the reason I did the claps with that much reverb is I wanted it to sound really drive home that 2 and 4, since the snare wasn't doing it all the time. If we put the snare in this together, you can see they complement each other really nicely. Let's listen to the perk bus and the drum bus together, and then I'll slowly kick on everything else. Yeah, man, sounds awesome. The last thing for the instrumental is we have an instrumental bus. Some people call this like the rear bus. I'm treating this kind of as the, if I ever needed to put out an instrumental mix, I could do that really quickly. The first plugin I'm putting here is called Curves Resolve, I guess, from Waves Audio. And basically this is listening. You can feed it like a sidechain information. So if you're feeding it, say, a vocal, it would react to the vocal and dip the track it's on so where the other track, say the vocal, can stand out better. So if you're listening, if we're going to play this, it's not going to do anything because there's no vocal affecting it. If I turn on the vocal, turn on the sidechain,
No sign to stop and we keep fighting. With no sign to stop and we keep fighting.
you can kind of, if you zoom in, I don't know why you would do that, you can see it's pushing some stuff down. So let's listen to that again.
Been bad this time of year. No sign to stop and we keep fighting. It won't always be bad. You can believe it. No sign to stop and we keep fighting. With no sign to stop and we keep fighting.
That's a really, really dramatic case of how you would do that. I'm doing like a lot less. It's very subtly dipping down the instrumental so the vocal can stand out a little bit more. And then I'm doing some more EQ moves on the instrumental. Just, I have a big problem with my speaker setup of like low mids creep in quite a bit. So I'm just cutting some low mids so the track sounds balanced. You can hear that just focuses it up a little bit, makes it a little brighter, a little less muddy. And that's the instrumental stuff. Let's talk about vocals. Oh, I should say I recorded all these vocals with the Mojave Audio MA-201-FET that I used to record the acoustic guitar. On the last song I talked about, I used an SM7B, and it felt kind of closed off on my upper register for a lead vocal, at least for like backup vocals. I thought it was great. For this, I wanted something a little bit more open. I didn't have the Mojave Audio at the time. I bought it after that recording session. And on this one, I just thought that it needed that. So I, in the instrumental, didn't want to lose the timbre of vocals. So naturally, I recorded some ahs. So let's listen to those. I have been listening to a lot of Somber recently, and one thing I love that he does in his productions is he has an instrumental kind of section where he's just doing some oohs and ahs, and it's just like such a vibe. I wanted to copy that. I wanted to steal that. I am basically affecting these all the same, although I'm doing it individually as opposed to on the bus for basically volume and or pitch reasons. So on every channel, I'm throwing some Spoton, which is just some auto-tune, really simple auto-tune, 14% amount and 18% speed. It's pretty slow. It's pretty non-reactive, but it'll clamp onto it eventually. I'm also doing some vocal writer just to kind of keep the volume levels even, some compression just to make it fit a little bit better in the mix. Make sure it's up front enough to be heard, but not overwhelming everything else. So I turn them all on. This is what it sounds like. And you can hear it's just kind of making it sound a little poppier, a little more produced, and it kind of helps it come across in the track a little bit better. Since they are all my voice, I can EQ them all the exact same because it's just me. So I'm cutting a lot of the low end information, don't need that in backup vocals, cutting 2.8 or 3 because I don't like the way that sounds on my voice, especially when it builds up. And I'm also boosting some 5K to make it stand out a little bit more without having to raise the volume too much. Let's listen to that on and off. You can hear that just makes it more poppy, more standard 2020s pop production. Cleaner, crisper, brighter, more focused. Then I add some mix verb to make it sound more in a room. Kind of move it back a little bit in the field of sound. And I'm also adding some gain automation via Mix Tool. And I have a send reverb to a long verb. The long verb is a UAD lexicon 3-second haul, basically. Let's listen to it off and then I'll turn it on. It's doing its job, making it sound majestic and grandiose. And then I do some more of the same later, but this time I wanted to make it sound more rhythmic. So I had this idea in my head. There's a video of Bon Iver, which is one of my favorite artists of all time, doing Heavenly Father at the Sydney Opera House. And there's people that are like playing percussion on their body. It makes the voice sound affected in a interesting way. I tried to emulate it here. It's not incredibly noticeable, but I do think it adds a little bit of that push and pull. So let's listen to that. Yeah, just sounds a little bit different, a little bit just kind of new, and new is always better. We are now at the main vocal. So let's listen to my raw vocal. I have some Melodyne on this one. Don't worry about it. Let's just focus on the ones that I don't have Melodyne, so like right here.
What it takes to make this life go. And I know things have been bad this time of year.
I actually have video of me recording all these takes, which I'll probably put in here somewhere. I started recording vocals earlier today. This week was my son's birthday party, so we had a lot to do around the house. I don't feel too worried about it. It's a little high in my register, but not too bad. Yeah, and that's what you're gonna be watching me record the rest of the time. You can see my janky recording setup for this. Let me turn it around. I've got like a little pop filter and foam to catch some noise on top of my sound panel. It's not too bad as far as like noise goes. It's fine. Also got some paneling back here, so there shouldn't be a ton of bleed or anything like that. Got some pretty clean results in the past, and I'm happy with it, so I'm just gonna keep rolling with it.
I got lost on the Natchez Trace, stuck in a van going 38, it's clear. Something ain't right, I swear all my life will make it. But no signs of stopping, we keep fighting it won't. Just trust in ourselves, work harder than hell. Oh, I'm not scared when I draw from your well.
It only took me 39 takes, which is low for me. I was on fire that night. Even the melodyne I'm doing is not like huge moves. It's just to kind of make a drawn out note sound a little bit more smooth, a little bit cleaner, a little less clashy. Overall, I did a really good job with these takes. It's really clean. It's a really good sound. It's got a lot of sauce on the performance. And that ultimately makes the track better, I think. For Cup of Tea, it took a long time to get in the right headspace for that vocally. And I mean, if I'm listening to it today, I can hear all the parts I wish I could go back and re-record. But alas, it's not the way these things go. On the vocal, I am doing some preamp gain, basically.
What it takes to make this life go. And I know things have been bad this time of year.
It just sounds good. It's adding a little bit of extra characteristic there, but it's not like heavy-handed, not doing a ton, but it sounds different. It's adding more volume, obviously, so it sounds better, but just some extra sauce to it. It's nice. From there, I'm doing some EQ moves, predominantly taking out the low end, par for the course. I will just kick that on. You don't need to hear that. I don't have a particularly deep or bassy voice, but, you know, plosives happen. I was using a kind of a windsock, but still plosives happen. Then I'm throwing an 1176 on here.
I know things have been bad this time of year. When no signs of stopping, we keep fighting. It won't always be bad if you can believe it.
Tons of compression, super fast, I think, right? 1 is the fastest and 7 is the slowest release. If I'm wrong, let me know. Give me a vocal starting point and I'll mess around with it from there. I think this might actually just be the default. Yeah, wow. For the preset of that worked perfectly for my voice. I did not make any adjustments, which is crazy. It just worked. I thought it sounded great. It's doing this thing where it's kind of giving that 1176 characteristic a little bit, while also making sure the vocals are kind of in 3D right in the front. From there, I'm doing some EQ moves, doing a lot of cutting out more low end. I don't know why I need to do that. Cutting off some of the thuddiness of my voice, along with some 500, 1K, 3K, and dipping the highs a little bit. I don't normally make EQ moves like this, but that Mojave Audio with the conjunction of the 1176 and my vocal performance, it just seemed like it needed it. Let's take a listen to that.
Now I know things have been bad this time of year. With no signs of stopping, we keep fighting. It won't always be bad.
Just really laser focused there. Takes a lot of that stuff we don't need in that vocal, some of that room sound, some of the kind of less pleasant frequencies of my voice, trims them down and just really focuses in on what it should sound like. Killer. De-esser, you're compressing something that heavily, you need the de-ess. And then last and not least, I've also got a splitter using a compressor this time. LA2A is a slower compressor than the 1176. Let's listen to it on and then off.
I know things have been bad this time of year. With no signs of stopping, we keep fighting.
It's really there just to catch the peaks, trim it off a little bit. You know, the 1176 is doing a ton of work to kind of take a lot of these larger sections and bring them closer together. The 1176 is just taming those peaks. It's just doing that job perfectly. On the vocal bus, we've got some distortion, and this is predominantly just to add a characteristic and to make it sound better. So let's take a listen to that.
What it takes to make this life go. And I know things have been bad this time of year. With no signs of stopping, we keep fighting.
I'm just doing some mix automation, so the verses sound a certain way, and the vocal does jump up to a higher register, higher notes, but I wanted it to sound even more impactful. So what I did was I took some of this distortion and I just blended it in on the chorus. You can see it kind of go from 0 to 10% as I get into the chorus. And it's a pretty subtle effect, but it does the job well, I'd say. Let's listen to it.
Life go, and I know things have been bad this time of year.
It's adding just a little bit of mid-range kind of funk to it, just making it stick out a little bit more without being overwhelming. Because if I turn the mix all the way up,
no signs of stopping, we keep fighting. It won't always be bad.
kind of megaphony, which is nothing wrong with that. It's just not good for this vocal track. And I'm doing some vocal writer. I said in the last mix breakdown that I'm not very good at volume automation for phrases and vocals, and that's still true today. So I'm just using vocal writer just to save some time. 6 dB up, 6 dB down as needed, and it just helps make it level.
Oh, things have been bad this time of year. With no signs of stopping, we keep fighting. It won't always be bad if you can believe it.
If you listen to a mix and you're like, there's vocal writer, you used it wrong. Kind of subtle. The things that you wanted to do are slightly dip loud phrases and slightly raise to moderately raise quiet phrases to make sure that they're all roughly the same. But if you do it too heavy-handed, it can just sound undynamic. So you got to find that right balance of the two. Then also, of course, gain automation. For the sends, I've got the side chain to the instrument bus for curves. That's on always. I've got a plate reverb, which is my standard kind of beat delay, which is a simple delay plugin acting as a pre-delay for little plate set to little less than 2 seconds mod, fully wet, cutting about to, 700 or so, and then doing the Abbey Road trick to kind of get out the unwanted information. And that's what this sounds like.
Make this life go, and I know things have been bad.
You can hear it's present, but it's not like overwhelming. It's kind of like the 80s dialed it back a little bit. Like some of the reverb sounds in the 80s, while like really cool, are just like overwhelming. Does that need to be 3 seconds? And so I wanted it to be a little longer. I try to have as a rule, short or no reverb in the verse, and then a lot longer reverb on the choruses and bridges. I don't think I'm using this room reverb at all. I'm not. So I'm just using no verb, then plate on the choruses.
Just trace, stuck in a van going 38 is clear.
It's weird to me that I didn't use any verb on that, but I think I wanted the contrast. We'll get into the whole thing a little bit later. Actually, we won't. When we listen to the acoustic guitar, mandolin, bass, it already has some reverb, but for the room, I felt like the voice didn't need that. The vocal didn't need that. Only using reverb on the choruses. Young producers like me, I'm 32, I'm young, I promise. Try without the reverb. Just see what happens. If it sounds good, cool. You can kind of brag to your friends about it. Sounds bad? Throw in half the reverb you think you need, and then just kind of blend it up from there. You'll be cool, I promise. I'm also doing a throw reverb just on these phrases. So take a listen to this.
I swear on my life.
And that throw is so long. Little plate again. I love this plugin. 8 seconds. Just give me full wet modulation and give me as much low cut as you can.
I swear on my life we'll make it.
As you can hear, it's like just a throw. So it's like, I swear on my, and then it's like life, and it's this huge reverb, and then the vocal sneaks out, we'll make it, above that as really dry. It's a really cool kind of heavy-handed effect, to be honest with you, but I wanted to make a heavy-handed effect, make a big move, and let kind of people react to it. I feel like a lot of the mix decisions I love in my favorite songs are drastic sometimes. And I don't feel the freedom to do that all the time. But on this song, I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm also doing the Abbey Road trick here as well, cutting the low end, cutting the high end, boosting 1K. I tried 2K. It sounded too bright. 1K was like the perfect amount of balance.
No matter the price, I'll pay it.
On over all the individual tracks and buses and synths, I think it is time for the master bus. On the master bus, I am cutting some subs. It's not doing a ton. Then I'm doing some SSL bus compression. I am a firm believer in SSL bus compression. I don't use it on every song, and I don't think it should be on every song, but it just kind of does the thing a little bit, you know? Subtle kind of volume bump. I'm using like 25% of the mix too. It's subtle volume bump. It's kind of making it all gel together a little bit better. And it's a vibe. I used to put this on like songs with like 3 tracks, and it was like, that's kind of pumping too much. And on this song with more instruments than I'm used to, it's a great plugin. I loved it. From there, I am doing AirWindows Clip Softly, which they're only to catch the very peaks of things that make it through the bus comp. You know, by consequence, it sounds a little louder, but it's not doing a ton. It's just really there just to catch the very peaks to prevent it from clipping.
No sign to stop, and we keep fighting. It won't always be bad if you can believe it. No sign to stop, and we keep fighting. With no sign to stop, and we keep fighting.
I've touched every plugin on here, every single track, bus, everything. So let's wrap this up. If you stay to the end of the video, thank you very much. I hope you learned something from this. And if not, I hope you got to laugh a little bit at a guy just making music in his bedroom. Ultimately, I do this because I love it and I want people to listen to it. So if you listened to this, enjoyed it, go stream the song. Follow us on YouTube, Spotify, whatever. Just keep in touch. We'd love to hear back from you. And until the next one, see ya. Have a good rest of your night.